3 days before the wedding, we were in the private wine cellar. The one Arthur was so proud of. All dark oak and shadow. His parents, Arthur and Margaret, sat opposite me. Margaret slid a thick stack of papers across the antique oak table. It wasn't a slide. It was a throw. It landed with a dry, heavy thud that echoed in the silence. Arthur was smirking. That smug, I own the world grin. Margaret's smile was just a thin line. It didn't reach her eyes. Just a formality. Dear, she cooed, to protect the legacy. They thought they'd won. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My family was just getting started. It wasn't always like this. 4 years ago, I met Caleb at the annual Harvest Gala, one of those private Napa Valley events where families who've owned vineyards for a century pretend to discover new wines. He was magnetic. He had that careless, expensive charm. And he seemed real. He told me he was tired of the posturing, that he wanted something authentic. I fell for it. I really did. I was the founder of a small, passionate ecotech startup. I spent my days trying to find ways to make agriculture sustainable. He spent his days as the director of development at his family's wine empire. We were magic for a while. Late nights drinking Merlot straight from the barrel. Dancing barefoot on the cold, ancient oak floors of the estate, overlooking the valley. I thought I'd found a partner, but the small things were always there. The little hairline cracks in the facade. The way his mother, Margaret, would introduce me at parties. This is Caleb's girl. Dahlia, never just Dahlia. Always an accessory, a possession. Caleb's girl. Or the way his father, Arthur, would ask me about my work. I'd explain my company's mission, developing biodegradable packaging from grape skins. He'd listen patiently, that same empty smile, and then ask, "And what about your family? Dahlia, what's their background?" I told him I was self-made, that my parents were teachers. He just nodded, said, "Ah?" and turned away to talk to a senator about tax breaks. I spent a long time trying to understand them. I thought it was just arrogance, but it was deeper than that. It was this delusion of legacy. They weren't afraid of losing money. They had more than they could ever spend. They were afraid of losing relevance. They were terrified of their pure family line, their perfect, curated story, being diluted. I wasn't a financial threat to them. I was a cultural one. I wasn't old money. I wasn't legacy. I was just a girl, a self-made girl who didn't fit into their perfect oil painting. I wasn't a person. I was a flaw in their narrative. And they were finally, 3 days before the wedding, ready to correct it. The cracks started showing 2 months ago. The florist, the one Margaret insisted on, the one who charges $12,000 for peonies, called me. Her voice was tight, embarrassed. "Ms. Pierce," she said, "the deposit for the main hall, the estate's credit card was declined." I remember I was in my lab at the time, looking at soil samples. I paid the deposit myself. Caleb just laughed it off. "Oh, Dad's probably just switching accounts. It's a mix-up." Then, a week later, the jeweler called, the one who had insured the obscenely large diamond on my finger. "We just need a final signature for the policy," she said, "from his family's trustee." "His family's?" I asked. "Not ours." "A Stiftpause." "Yes, that's correct. The asset is still held by the family trust." The asset, not the ring. That was when I started to dig. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it systematically. The way I'd built my company, I pulled property records. I looked at LLC filings for the vineyard. I ran credit checks. The car Caleb drove, the one he claimed was a gift for his 30th birthday, registered to Napa Legacy Holdings, a shell corp, the penthouse owned by Margaret. Every single asset, every bottle of wine, every acre of land, all of it was held in trust by Arthur and Margaret. Caleb, the charming, careless man who didn't care about money, didn't have any. He was just an employee, on an allowance. Living in his parents' house, he didn't own a single thing, not even the last name. Really, he just used it. And now, sitting in that cold wine cellar, I looked down at the document they'd thrown at me. I wasn't surprised by the usual clauses that I'd waive all rights to their legacy. I was looking for something else, and I found it. Page 12, Section 4. A new clause, clearly added just for me. It stated that if I, Dahlia Pierce, initiated a cancellation of the wedding, for any reason, I would be liable to pay the family a penalty of $250,000 for social and reputational damages. It wasn't a prenup. It was a trap. They weren't just protecting their assets. They were making sure I couldn't leave without paying a price. They were putting a $250,000 chain on my ankle. I read the line twice. I felt my heart beat. Slow and steady. I looked up from the papers. Caleb was staring at his hands. Arthur was still smirking. Margaret looked bored, expectant, like a queen waiting for a servant to bow. I smiled. A real, genuine smile. This is very thorough, I said. I'll need my lawyer to review this. Of course. I'm sure you understand. My lawyer's name is Jessica. You don't hire Jessica to win. You hire her to make sure the other side loses. I was in her glass-walled office, downtown. Before the sun was even fully up, the prenup was on her desk. She'd already read it. She pushed it back towards me with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. This, she said, her voice like ice, is not a contract. It's an insult. That $250,000 penalty clause is an antique, it's a 19th century shame clause, dressed up in modern legal jargon. It's designed to make you too scared to leave. She leaned back. They're betting on you being a gold digger, and they're also betting on you being a fool. I looked out the window at the city waking up. They made a mistake. I said quietly, "Of course they did." Jessica said, "It's unenforceable. We can." "No, Jessica." I cut her off, turning back to look at her. They made a real mistake. They assumed I need their money. Jessica paused. She's good at reading people. She was reading me now. "Me ecotech startup," I said. "The one they all called my little passion project. The one Arthur once patted me on the head for. I sold it," I said. 6 months ago. A quiet acquisition by a global conglomerate. The deal was clean. All stock. No press. After taxes, the final number was $15 million. Jessica didn't move. She just stared at me. Then, for the first time, she smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. The smile of a shark that just smelled blood in the water. "Dahlia Pierce," she said, "you are my new favorite client." They never knew. I never told Caleb. It wasn't a lie. It was strategic. In a world where everyone screams to be seen, to be valued, to show off what they have. Silence is a luxury. It's the ultimate power. It wasn't humility. It was absolute confidence. I never wanted a man to love me for what was in my bank account. And I certainly didn't want a man or his family to fear me for it. I just wanted to be me. Caleb's girl, the girl with the passion project. I let them believe their own story. I let them think they were the powerful ones. And I was the lucky one. Because you don't have to tell anyone how many bullets are in the gun. You just have to know, in your gut, exactly when to fire. So, I said, that $250,000 trap, it's not a chain. It's an opening. Jessica's smile widened. Oh? Yes, she said. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. We're not just going to decline their offer. We are going to counter. I'm drafting a new document. A simple engagement termination agreement. Fair, balanced, and brutal. She started writing. I felt good. I felt clear, but as I stood up to leave, a thought, a splinter that had been bugging me for weeks, came back. The declined credit card, the insurance, Caleb's distance, his fear in the wine cellar. He wasn't just a puppet. He was a scared puppet. And why? Jessica, I said, draft the document, but I have one more stop to make. I didn't go home. I went to an electronics store. I bought the smallest, thinnest, voice-activated recorder they had. The kind that looks like a cheap power bank. They thought I was a fool. I was about to find out if the man I was supposed to marry was a fool or just a monster. I called them back. I told Margaret my lawyer was reviewing the document, but that I wanted to talk it through with them, just to understand the spirit of the agreement. I said, my voice was smooth, accommodating. She bought every word. Of course. Dear, we'll all meet tomorrow evening. Just us. That night, I told Caleb I needed some space. This prenup. I said, it's a lot. I'm going to stay in the guest house tonight. Just to clear my head. He looked, for a second, like he wanted to protest, but then a different look crossed his face. Relief. He thought I was just being a dramatic girl. He thought I'd go pout, feel overwhelmed by the money and the legacy, and then come back, tail between my legs, ready to sign. He wanted me to be alone so I could come to my senses. Of course, he said, trying to sound supportive. Whatever you need. I packed an overnight bag, and I took the small, black power bank, the recorder with me. I walked into the main house. It was empty. Caleb was at the office. I went to the library, the room where he and Arthur always had their late-night brandy. I knew he'd be in there when he got home. I slipped the recorder under a stack of old leather-bound books on the side table. It was voice-activated. It would be waiting. I didn't stay in the guest house. I got in my car, and I drove up to the lookout point on the far side of the valley, the one overlooking their entire, perfect, sprawling kingdom of grapes. I sat there for 3 hours. The sun went down. The lights of the estate glittered below. A constellation of arrogance. At midnight, I drove back. I parked my car down the road, cut the engine, and walked back to the house, letting myself in through the kitchen. The house was silent. I went to the library. The power bank was exactly where I left it. I didn't listen to it in the house. I walked back to my car, parked in the dark, under the stars, and plugged the recorder into my car's audio system. For a long time, there was nothing, just the hiss of silence. Then, the sound of a glass being set down, ice clinking, and Caleb's voice, slurred, tired, guilty. She'll sign, he mumbled. I know she will. She's not stupid enough to walk away from all this. A pause. My heart was pounding. A cold, hard drum beat in my chest. And then, a woman's voice, not Margaret's. You said she'd sign before the wedding. Caleb, the voice said. It was sharp. Impatient. You promised me. I froze. I knew that voice. It was Chloe. Chloe. A family friend. A girl who was always just around. Always at the parties. Always laughing just a little too loudly. Always looking at me with a smile that felt more like a baring of teeth. It's fine. Caleb slurred. My parents scared her with the prenup. She's in the guest house. She's probably crying. She'll be back tomorrow. Ready to sign. She better be. Chloe said. My father is counting on this. And then, it hit me. Like a physical blow. Chloe. Chloe Ashford. The Ashfords. The family whose neighboring vineyard had been choked out. Litigated. And absorbed by Arthur 10 years ago in the most hostile takeover Napa had ever seen. A man Arthur had financially destroyed. A man who had lost everything. Mais God. It wasn't just an affair. It was a long con revenge plot. And Caleb was just a pawn. A weak, stupid pawn. Caught between his parents' game and Chloe's. And me. I was the collateral damage. The girl who was supposed to just sign the papers. I sat there in the dark. The car silent. The blood in my veins turned to ice. My heart didn't feel broken. It felt hard. It felt cold. It felt ready. I realized this was so much bigger than I thought. And their perfect legacy was built on a foundation of sand. About to be washed away by a tide, I was now going to personally command. The final meeting. We were back in the oak-paneled wine cellar. It smelled of old wood, old money, and something sour. Arthur, Margaret, and Caleb sat on one side of that massive, polished table. They looked so confident, so smug, ready to receive my surrender. Jessica and I stood on the other side. I didn't want to sit. I wanted them to have to look up at me. Arthur started, leaning back, lacing his fingers over his vest. Well, Dahlia, I'm glad you've decided to be sensible. I assume your Lavier has explained the terms. Margaret smiled, that thin smile. It's for the best. Dear, now, you sign. And we can put all this unpleasantness behind us. The wedding is in 2 days. Caleb just stared at the table. Silent. A perfect, polished coward. I have reviewed your contract. I said. My voice was calm. Clear. It didn't echo. But it cut through the heavy air. It's fascinating. Especially the $250,000 penalty. Arthur chuckled. A low, arrogant sound. A good fence protects the entire pasture. Dahlia, so, what's it to be? Are you signing? Or are you writing a check? I placed my own document on the table. A single, thin stack of papers. This is mine. I said. Jessica slid it across the polished wood. It stopped right in front of Arthur. He glanced at the title. An engagement termination agreement, wonderful. So you are writing the check. A costly decision, and costly decision. Young lady. Oh, I'm not writing any checks. I said. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the small, black power bank, and I placed it on the table, right next to their insulting prenup. Arthur frowned. What's this, a toy? Caleb paid the price for me. I said. I thought you all should hear it. I pressed the play button. The air in the room went still. And then, Caleb's slurred voice filled the cellar. She'll sign. She'll sign. She's not stupid enough to walk away from all this. I watched Margaret's face. Her polite smile froze, cracking at the edges. Then, Chloe's voice, sharp and impatient. You promised me she'd sign before the wedding. Caleb. Margaret's mouth fell open. Her eyes darted to me, then to her son. Caleb looked like he'd been shot. His face was a mask of gray. Abject terror. It's fine. She's in the guest house. She's probably crying. Arthur, who had been leaning back in his chair, slowly sat up. His face wasn't smug anymore. It was pale, a waxy, sick color. I let it play. Every word, every deceitful promise, every bit of their pathetic, greedy, stupid plan. I pressed stop. The silence that followed was colder, heavier. Margaret stared at her son. Composure fractured like dropped porcelain. Arthur's color went from chalk to mottled purple. He wasn't looking at Caleb anymore. He was looking at me. You recognize that voice, don't you? Arthur, I said evenly. Chloe Ashford. The name detonated. Understanding flooded his face, not outplayed by me, the ambitious girl, but by a ghost from a family he'd broken a decade ago. Chloe had turned his own son into a weapon. I only lit the fuse. Jessica, me lavier, is stepped forward, voice sharp as a scalpel. My client's engagement termination agreement is non-negotiable. Terms: 1. Engagement void. Effective immediately. For premeditated fraud and emotional distress. 2. Your $250. 000 penalty clause is nullified by the fraud. 3. All wedding expenses paid by my client over $100. 000 reimbursed by wire within 24 hours. We have receipts. 4. Contest this. Smear her or stall payment. And this recording plus the story of Chloe Ashford's 10-year revenge goes to every major outlet in Napa and beyond. She smiled. Your legacy. Arthur, picture the headlines. Silence. Arthur looked at Margaret, then at Caleb, who was crying in small NVH. Useless gasps. Arthur's hand shook as he signed. The story leaked anyway, maybe Chloe. Maybe not. The headlines arrived on schedule. Napa legacy shattered by internal betrayal. Their empire of image cracked down the spine. Me, I spent my would-be wedding day on a beach in Capri, where the honeymoon was booked, alone. I watched the sunset, sipped something expensive, and considered how easily people mistake silence for weakness, patience for naivety. They thought they could buy me, trap me, discard me. Instead, I walked away with $15 million and something rarer. I walked away free. No applause, no speech, just stillness, the quiet of choosing yourself. They cast me as a pawn, a liability, a girl who should be grateful, but I was never their damsel. I was the architect. I designed the exit while they rehearsed their victory. As the sun slid into the Tyrrhenian, I lifted my glass and let the truth settle. Silence isn't surrender. It's leverage. It's the sound of closing a door only you hold the key to. I didn't just leave with money. I left whole, untouchable. Have you ever chosen yourself over a perfect relationship? Share your story below, and if this hit home, like and subscribe.